1980s R&B was full of surprises, but few stories are sweeter than the songs that started slow and finished strong. Luther Vandross nearly missed one of his biggest moments, and Chaka Khan lit up dance floors when nobody expected it. These are the soulful comebacks that proved a slow start means nothing in the long run. Number 15, Rocksteady by The Whispers.
Looked at you, you stole my heart, you are all that I am.
When this smooth roller first appeared in 1987, it did not explode out of the gate the way Solar Records had hoped. The Whispers were already veterans by then, respected but no longer considered guaranteed hitmakers in the fast-changing late 80s R&B scene.
And we begin to rock, steady.
Early radio response was polite but far from electric, and for a moment it looked like this groove might quietly fade into the background. Behind the scenes though, the track had serious pedigree. Produced by the legendary L.A. Reid and Babyface during their rise to dominance, the song carried a sleek, modern polish that would soon define late-decade R&B. Program directors began to notice how strongly audiences reacted once it actually hit the airwaves. And once listeners locked into that buttery bass line and silky vocal blend, momentum slowly built. By early 1988, the record surged up the charts, eventually reaching number 1 on the R&B chart and crossing into pop territory as well. What started as a slow burn became one of the group's signature records. If that was a quiet groove that grew louder with time, the next track took an even bumpier road before finding its spotlight. Number 14, Ain't Nobody by Chaka Khan.
That's the way it was, happened so naturally.
When this sparkling groove first surfaced in 1983 as part of Rufus and Chaka Khan's live album, Stompin' at the Savoy, it was not positioned as the blockbuster single it would become. In fact, the label originally pushed another track harder, assuming this one might simply serve as a nice album cut for loyal fans.
I needed someone, and now we're flying through the stars.
Early airplay was modest, and the song did not immediately explode the way Chaka's biggest hits had in the late 70s. But inside the industry, musicians were already buzzing. Written by the brilliant keyboardist David Hawk Walensky, the song featured a then cutting-edge drum machine pattern that gave it a futuristic pulse.
Ain't nobody got me better.
DJs in urban markets began slipping it into late-night sets, and something magical started happening on dance floors across the country. Listeners responded to that unmistakable vocal warmth paired with the sleek electronic groove. Slowly but surely, radio stations gave it heavier rotation.
And a love so deep you cannot measure. Ain't nobody.
By late 1983, the song climbed to number 1 on the R&B chart and became one of Chaka Khan's defining recordings. What began as a quiet album edition transformed into a timeless anthem. And if you think that comeback was impressive, the next entry fought even harder to claim its place in the spotlight. Number 13, Sweet Love by Anita Baker.
Come on, sing it with me, sweet love.
When this velvet smooth ballad first arrived in 1986, it did not immediately storm the charts the way Elektra Records had quietly hoped. Anita Baker was still building her national profile, and early radio response was cautious. Some program directors were unsure whether the slow-burning sophistication of her sound could compete in an era increasingly leaning toward upbeat dance cuts. But those who heard it closely knew something special was unfolding. Produced during the sessions for her breakthrough album Rapture, the song showcased Anita at a delicate turning point in her career. She was no longer just a Detroit favorite. She was stepping into national spotlight territory, even if the charts had not caught up yet. What changed everything was word of mouth. Quiet Storm radio formats began embracing the track, and listeners kept requesting it night after night. That lush arrangement and her warm emotional delivery slowly wrapped around audiences like a late-night embrace. By early 1987, the song had blossomed into a major crossover success.
So sweet, so sweet.
Winning a Grammy and becoming Anita Baker's signature hit. A slow burn had turned into pure gold, and if that one simmered its way to the top, the next record practically had to fight its way back from the brink. Number 12, Outstanding by the Gap Band.
Girl, you're looking sweeter now.
When this funk-drenched groove dropped in 1982, it surprisingly did not dominate right away the way many expected from the Gap Band. Coming off earlier successes, the group had momentum, but early chart movement for this track was steadier than explosive.
So excited.
Some radio programmers initially leaned toward the group's harder-hitting funk cuts, leaving this smoother jam to find its audience slowly. Behind the scenes, the record had all the right ingredients. Produced by Lonnie Simmons for Total Experience Records, the track blended polished funk rhythms with a lighter, more danceable feel that hinted at where early 80s R&B was heading. Still, it took time for DJs to fully embrace its laid-back but infectious groove. Out in the real world, though, dance floors were telling a different story. Club crowds responded immediately once the song slipped into rotation. That rubbery bass line and call-and-response vocal hook started sticking in listeners' heads in a big way. By the mid-80s and to beyond, the track took on a second life through heavy club play, sampling, and radio revival. What began as a modest performer evolved into one of the most recognizable funk staples of the decade. And speaking of songs that found new life beyond their first run, the next entry's journey is even more surprising. Number 11, Just Be Good to Me by the SOS Band. When this moody slow jam arrived in 1983, expectations were high. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were just beginning to build their production empire, and the SOS Band had already tasted success. But surprisingly, the song did not explode instantly across all markets.
I don't care what you do to them. Just be.
Early pop radio support was cautious, and for a moment, it looked like this emotionally complex groove might stay confined to core R&B audiences. Recorded for the album On the Rise, the track marked a creative turning point. Jam and Lewis were experimenting with a colder, more spacious Minneapolis-inspired sound that would later dominate the decade. At the time, though, it was slightly ahead of mainstream tastes.
Seem to always miss.
What changed everything was listener connection. Quiet Storm stations and urban DJs noticed audiences leaning in whenever that haunting synth line floated through the speakers. The song's mature message about loyalty and complicated love resonated deeply with adult listeners. Momentum steadily built, and the record climbed into the top 10 on the R&B chart while crossing into pop awareness.
Just be good to me.
Over the years, it became one of the duo's most sampled and influential productions. We are getting closer to the midpoint now, and trust me, the comeback story waiting at number 10 might surprise even longtime fans. Number 10, Love Come Down by Evelyn King.
Been dreaming of you. Please.
When this shimmering dance floor favorite arrived in 1982, it did not immediately explode the way RCA Records had predicted. Evelyn King had already scored with earlier releases, but early reaction to this sleek, synth-driven single was slower than expected.
You make my love
Some stations hesitated, unsure whether its polished electronic edge would connect with traditional R&B audiences. Behind the boards, though, something special was brewing. Produced by Kashif and Paul Lawrence, the track was part of a new wave of sophisticated early 80s soul.
Come down. Ooh, you make my love.
That blended funk roots with modern drum machine precision. It sounded fresh, maybe even a little ahead of its moment. Club DJs were the first to sense its power. Late-night dance floors began lighting up as soon as that sparkling intro kicked in. Word spread quickly through urban markets, and radio programmers started giving the record heavier spins. By early 1983, the song surged into the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a #1 R&B hit. What began as a slow starter transformed into one of the decade's most beloved dance soul classics. If that groove took time to bloom, the next record almost slipped away entirely before finding its second life. Number 9, If Only for One Night by Luther Vandross.
To ease away your fear.
When this elegant ballad first appeared on Luther Vandross's 1985 album, The Night I Fell in Love, it was not pushed as an obvious blockbuster. The label initially focused attention on more immediate singles, and this tender, slow burner quietly entered the world without much early fanfare.
Let me hold you tight.
For an artist already known for vocal excellence, this one seemed destined to remain a deep album favorite. But Luther had a way of letting songs breathe. Recorded during a period when he was refining his signature romantic style, the track it showcased his remarkable control and emotional restraint.
Live for one night. Yeah.
Industry insiders admired it immediately, yet mainstream momentum came slowly. Then Quiet Storm Radio did what Quiet Storm Radio often does. Late-night listeners began requesting it repeatedly, drawn to the intimate mood and Luther's velvet-smooth delivery. Couples slow danced to it. DJs kept spinning it.
If only for one night.
Over time, the song became one of the most beloved performances in his catalog, even without an explosive chart debut. What began as an understated album moment evolved into a defining Luther Vandross classic. And if that was a slow burn romance, the next entry brought pure dance floor electricity that almost nobody saw coming. Number 8, Let It Whip by Dazz Band. When this electrifying funk cut landed in 1982, it did not instantly dominate radio the way Motown had hoped. The Dazz Band was still building national recognition, and early response in some major markets was surprisingly cautious. Program directors were juggling a crowded field of early 80s dance records, and for a brief moment, this groove risked getting lost in the shuffle. But musically, the record was loaded with hit potential. Produced by Reggie Andrews, the track blended tight funk rhythms with bright, radio-friendly energy that perfectly matched the era's shift toward dance-driven R&B. Still, it needed the right spark to catch fire. That spark came from the clubs. Once DJs dropped the needle, crowds responded immediately. The punchy horns and irresistible chant of the chorus started sticking in listeners' heads. Requests grew, airplay expanded, momentum built week by week. By mid-1982, the song whipped its way to #1 on the R&B chart and even crossed into the pop top 10, eventually winning a Grammy for Best R&B Performance. What began as a slow riser became the band's defining smash. We have reached the halfway point, and coming up next is a track whose comeback story might be the smoothest surprise on this entire list. Number 7, Between the Sheets by the Isley Brothers.
As I can see, I wanna keep you here.
When this silky slow jam arrived in 1983, it was not immediately treated as the powerhouse single it would later become. The Isley Brothers were already legends by then, but radio was crowded with upbeat electro, funk, and dance cuts.
Coming home, oh darling, just taste my love.
Early momentum for this smooth late-night groove was steady rather than explosive, and for a moment it seemed destined to remain more of a quiet storm favorite than a major crossover moment. Recorded during a period when the group was experimenting with more sensual, synth-layered production, the track captured a different side of their sound. The younger Isleys were helping reshape the group's direction, blending classic soul warmth with the sleek textures of the new decade.
Feel your love surrounding me.
Industry insiders respected it, but the charts moved cautiously at first. Then, the late-night listeners took over. Quiet Storm Radio embraced the record heavily, and couples across the country made it part of their personal soundtrack. Its lush atmosphere proved impossible to ignore. Over time, the song grew into one of the most sampled and influential slow jams of the entire era. Echoing through hip-hop and R&B for decades. If these classics from the 80s are bringing back memories, give this video a thumbs up. It helps us keep the soul alive. And stay with us because the biggest surprises are still ahead. Because coming up next is a comeback story that shocked even the industry insiders. Number 6, Don't Disturb This Groove by The System. When this sleek electronic soul gem dropped in 1987, it did not immediately command the spotlight. The System had built a respectable following, but they were not yet considered dominant hitmakers in the crowded late 80s R&B landscape. Early radio response was steady, but far from explosive.
Hang the sign up on the door. I say don't disturb.
And some industry watchers initially viewed the single as just another solid release, rather than a future classic. Behind the scenes though, the duo of David Frank and Mick Murphy were perfecting a sound that blended synth pop precision with deep R&B feeling. The production was silky but futuristic, reflecting how the genre was evolving in real time. At first, that polished electronic edge may have taken a moment for traditional soul audiences to fully embrace. But once urban radio leaned in, the reaction changed quickly. Listeners were drawn to the hypnotic groove and Murphy's smooth, intimate vocal delivery. Requests built, airplay expanded, momentum grew week after week. By early 1988, the song had climbed to number 1 on the R&B chart and became the group's signature hit. What started as a quiet contender turned into one of the decade's most enduring slow jams. And trust me, the comeback story waiting at number 5 took an even more unexpected turn. Number 5, I Can't Go For That No Can Do by Hall & Oates.
Does it stop? Where do you dare me to draw the line? You got the body.
When this cool minimalist groove arrived at the tail end of 1981, it did not immediately scream blockbuster. Hall & Oates were already riding high, but early reactions to this stripped-down, almost hypnotic track were surprisingly measured.
I can't go for that, no, no can do. I can't.
Some programmers were unsure whether its laid-back feel had enough punch to dominate a radio landscape still full of big, glossy pop productions. Recorded during sessions for the album Private Eyes, the song marked a subtle but important shift. Daryl Hall was leaning into a smoother blue-eyed soul direction, blending R&B textures with pop sensibility in a way that felt quietly ahead of its time.
I'll do anything.
so. The single's early chart movement was steady rather than explosive. But once urban radio and club DJs started spinning it, everything changed. The groove was simply too infectious to ignore. Listeners locked into that rolling bass line and cool vocal restraint. By early 1982, the record surged to #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart, a rare crossover achievement. What began as a slow builder became one of the duo's defining hits. And coming up next, the story only gets bigger, because #4 almost slipped through the cracks entirely before making history. #4, Candy Girl by New Edition.
My girl's like candy, a candy tree. She knocks me high up off my feet.
When this youthful burst of bubblegum soul hit the streets in 1983, it did not immediately explode nationwide the way the label had hoped. New Edition were brand new kids from Boston with big Jackson 5 energy, but early radio response outside key urban markets was cautious. Some industry insiders quietly wondered if the group could really break through the crowded early 80s R&B landscape.
You make me feel so good. You ain't too.
Behind the scenes, though, the foundation was strong. Produced by Maurice Starr and released on Streetwise Records, the song captured that sweet spot between innocence and polish. The group was still finding its footing, still proving it could carry a national hit.
Fellas, what? Take out Mike and Bobby, the lady.
The turning point came from the streets first, not the charts. Teen audiences and urban radio began embracing the track heavily. Word of mouth spread fast, and suddenly programmers who had hesitated started paying attention.
All I want you to say, you're everything, everything.
By mid-1983, the single shot to #1 on the R&B chart and launched New Edition into full-blown teen sensation status. What started as a regional hopeful became a cultural lightning bolt that helped define the decade's young R&B sound. And hold on, because the surprise waiting at #3 proved that sometimes the quietest records make the loudest impact. #3, Juicy Fruit by Mtume. When this smooth, sun-soaked groove arrived in 1983, it did not immediately dominate the airwaves the way Epic Records had quietly hoped. Mtume were respected musicians, but they were not viewed as obvious chart stormers.
I'll be your lollipop, candy kisses.
Early radio ads were modest, and for a brief moment, the single looked like it might settle into niche R&B rotation rather than mainstream success. But musically, the track was built to last. Produced by the talented James Mtume and Reggie Lucas, the song carried a laid-back sophistication that reflected the evolving sound of early 80s soul. Its mellow tempo and dreamy synth textures may have felt understated at first, but listeners who caught it were instantly drawn in. Urban radio began leaning into the record, especially during evening programming. Requests grew steadily as audiences connected with its smooth, romantic vibe. That unmistakable bass line and relaxed vocal delivery slowly worked their way into heavy rotation. By late 1983, the song reached #1 on the R&B chart and became one of the most sampled grooves in hip-hop history. What started as a quiet contender turned into a foundational classic. And trust me, the emotional heavyweight waiting at #2 takes this comeback story to another level. #2, On the Radio by Donna Summer.
And they told the world desire felt.
When this shimmering anthem first appeared in late 1979 and carried its momentum into the early 80s, it was not immediately viewed as Donna Summer's next unstoppable smash. Disco backlash was already brewing, and some radio programmers were cooling on the genre altogether.
If by chance you'd heard it for yourself.
Early response in certain markets was cautious, with industry watchers unsure whether another Donna Summer single could cut through the shifting musical climate. But beneath the uncertainty was pure hit-making magic. Produced by Giorgio Moroder during a transitional moment in Donna's career, the song blended the emotional sweep of disco with a smoother pop and R&B sensibility that would help it age gracefully into the new decade. At first, its climb was steady rather than explosive. Then, something familiar happened. Listeners kept coming back. Whether it was the sweeping chorus or Donna's glowing vocal performance, the record began gaining serious traction across multiple formats. By the time its chart run peaked, the song had secured top 5 status on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of her most enduring crossover hits. What began under a cloud of industry doubt turned into a timeless radio staple. And now, the #1 surprise hit of the 80s might be the most unlikely comeback story of them all. Number 1, Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye. When this silky, futuristic groove arrived in late 1982, expectations were complicated. Marvin Gaye was returning after a turbulent period in both his personal life and professional career. Early industry chatter was cautious, and some observers quietly wondered whether the Motown legend could truly reconnect with a new decade of listeners.
Sexual healing, baby, is good for me.
The single's initial movement was steady rather than explosive. But what many underestimated was how perfectly Marvin had evolved. Recorded in Belgium during his comeback phase and released on Columbia Records, the track blended classic soul warmth with sleek drum machine textures that felt completely in step with the 80s. It sounded intimate,
We'll see if you don't know the thing you're dealing.
modern, and deeply human all at once. Radio audiences responded quickly once the song gained traction. Quiet storm stations embraced it first, then urban radio followed, and soon mainstream pop could not resist the wave. That hypnotic groove and Marvin's tender vocal delivery proved timeless.
Healing is good for me. Makes me.
By early 1983, the song had reached #1 on the R&B chart, crossed into the Pop Top 5, and earned Marvin a Grammy. What began under a cloud of uncertainty became one of the most iconic comeback hits in music history. From slow burners to unstoppable smashes, these tracks remind us that in the 80s, patience sometimes paid off in platinum. Thanks for joining us on this soul stroll. If you enjoyed the ride, subscribe to keep the groove alive and never miss our next countdown. And when you are ready for more timeless vibes, click the end screen and check out our previous countdown, 15 old R&B bands that really should retire right now. The rhythm never really stops.